They are emotional support groups for unclear organizations. Think about it. 5 people enter a room. One person shares updates that nobody needed. Another reopens a decision that was supposedly finalized 2 weeks ago. Someone says, let's circle back. And somehow, everyone leaves with more confusion than they came in with. Yeah, they leave the meeting more confused. It's like the Fast and Furious franchise. At some point, you stop asking, wait, why are we still here? And yet, organizations everywhere keep doing this every single week. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Most meetings are not a time management problem. They are an organizational alignment problem. That is what they are. And until leaders understand that distinction, meetings will continue draining time, energy, momentum, execution, and momentum. So in this video, I want to show you, 1, why most meetings fail before they even begin. 2, the hidden psychological reason teams keep talking without moving. 3, why better facilitation is not enough. And 4, the unconventional shift that transforms meetings from exhausting conversations into execution engines, because the real issue here is not that people are talking too much. That is not the real issue. It is that the organization is cognitively misaligned. The organization is cognitively misaligned. And once you see it, you will not be able to unsee it. Let's start with a controversial statement. The purpose of a meeting is not communication. It is not communication, it is coordination. That's a huge difference. Most organizations treat meetings like information sharing events. But information alone changes nothing. You can communicate brilliantly and still execute terribly. You have probably experienced this before. A leader explains the strategy clearly. Everyone nods. People say things like, absolutely, sounds good, we are aligned. Then 2 weeks later, different departments are moving in different directions. Deadlines are slipping, priorities are competing, and suddenly another meeting gets scheduled to discuss why execution is breaking down. Why? Because communication happened, but alignment did not. See, alignment is not hearing the same message. It is not attending the same meeting. It is not agreeing in the room. It is neither of those. Alignment means people live with the same priorities, the same interpretation, the same trade-off awareness, and the same behavioral commitment. That is very different. That is very different. And this is where most meetings collapse. Because leaders assume if everyone had it, everyone understood it. That assumption destroys execution. Destroys it completely. Here is something fascinating. Organizations with most meetings are often the organizations organizations with the least clarity. Most meetings usually do not mean more coordination. They don't. They often mean the organization is compensating for unresolved ambiguity. Think about it like this. When a GPS signal is weak, your phone keeps recalculating. That is what organizations do. Every unclear priority creates more recalculating, more check-ins, more updates, more follow-ups, more quick syncs, and eventually the organization becomes addicted to meetings because meetings become the only place where temporary alignment exists. The moment people leave the room, everything drifts apart again. So another meeting gets scheduled, and another, and another. It's an organizational Groundhog Day. Same conversation, different calendar invite. Now here is where it gets dangerous. Leaders often misdiagnose this problem. They think we need shorter meetings. We need stricter agendas. We need better productivity tools. Those things can help, but they don't solve the root issue. They can help, but they do not solve the root issue. Because the real problem is cognitive fragmentation. Different people are operating from different assumptions about what matters, what success means, what takes priority, and who owns what. So when meetings become collision points between competing mental models, and so no productivity hack can fix that. No, none whatsoever. Now, let's go deeper. Let's go deeper. Most excessive discussion in meetings is not caused by poor communication skills. It is caused by perceived risk. People keep talking when they do not trust the alignment. They don't trust the alignment underneath the decision. Watch what happens in many organizations. A leader says, we have decided to prioritize speed. Immediately somebody asks, what about quality? Another asks, what about compliance? Another says, what about customer experience? And suddenly the conversation spirals. Why? Because people are trying to protect themselves from future consequences. They're trying to protect themselves from future consequences. They are not debating the decision. They are debating the interpretation of the decision. That's a completely different thing. That is why meetings often feel exhausting. People are not merely exchanging ideas. They are unconsciously negotiating risk, accountability, political exposure, and future blame. That is why 1 hour meetings become 3-hour meetings. Not because people love talking, but because the organization has not created enough cognitive alignment for people to move confidently. And when confidence is absent, discussion expands indefinitely. It expands indefinitely. Here is one of the biggest lies in modern organizations. One of the biggest lies in modern organizations. It goes something like this. If everyone contributes, everyone will buy in. That sounds nice, but it is incomplete. Because involvement without clarity creates chaos. You have seen this happen. A meeting becomes so collaborative that nobody knows who decides, what was decided, what changed, or what happens next. The meeting feels productive emotionally, but operationally, nothing moved. It's like assembling the Avengers and then spending 2 hours discussing snacks instead of fighting Thanos. At some point, leadership requires decisiveness. Now, let me be clear. I'm not against collaboration. The problem is when collaboration replaces alignment architecture. Strong organizations understand that not every meeting needs consensus, but every meeting needs clarity. And it needs clarity on the following: decision ownership, trade-offs, priorities, accountability, and execution implications. Without that, meetings become intellectual entertainment. Imagine, meetings become intellectual entertainment. Lots of thinking, but very little involvement. Lots of thinking, but very little involvement. High-performing organizations approach meetings very differently. High-performing organizations approach meetings very differently. They don't use meetings to discover alignment. They use meetings to confirm alignment. That changes everything. Before the meeting even starts, there is already 1, contextual clarity, 2, role clarity, 3, decision clarity, 4, priority clarity. So the meeting becomes fast because the community foundation already exists. This is one of the core ideas behind the organizational community alignment. Execution breakdown is rarely caused by lack of effort. Rarely does that happen. It is caused by misaligned interpretation. And meetings expose that misalignment faster than anything else. Here is what effective organizations understand. Every meeting should answer 5 questions. 1, what problem are we actually solving? Number 2, who owns the decision? Number 3, what trade-offs are we accepting? Number 4, what changes after this meeting? Number 5, how will execution be reinforced afterwards? If those 5 things are unclear, the meeting will likely create more noise than movement. And here is another unconventional truth. Sometimes the best meeting is no meeting. If something only requires information transfer, use documentation. If something only requires status visibility, use dashboards. If something only requires awareness, send an update. Meetings should exist primarily for alignment, decision making, conflict resolution, or strategic coordination. Anything else is usually organizational theater. Anything outside of the ones I've mentioned is usually organizational theater. Now, some people here this conversation and think, well, bad meetings are annoying. No, bad meetings are expensive. They're very expensive. Every unclear meeting creates execution delays, duplicated effort, hidden frustration, decision fatigue, accountability confusion, and organizational distrust. And over time, something dangerous happens. Something even more dangerous happens. People stop believing meetings matter. So they disengage emotionally while remaining present physically. They attend, but they don't commit. And once that happens, execution quality drops dramatically. Execution quality drops dramatically because commitment does not come from attendance. It comes from aligned understanding. That is why fixing meetings is not just about productivity. It's about organizational coherence. So why are most meetings a waste of time? Why? Why is this so? Because most meetings are trying to compensate for problems that should have been solved before the meeting started. This is where we have unclear priorities, unclear ownership, unclear trade-offs, unclear accountability, and meetings become the organizational bandage for deeper alignment failures. But once leaders shift from how do we run better meetings to how do we create better alignment, everything changes. Everything changes. Meetings become shorter. Yeah, they become shorter. Decisions become clearer. Execution becomes faster. And teams, they stop reopening the same conversations every week. They stop. Because ultimately, the goal of a meeting is not to talk. The goal is coordinated movement. And organizations that master alignment don't just communicate better. They execute better. They don't just master alignment, but they also communicate better and they execute better. If this video challenged you the way you think about meetings, subscribe to the channel, because on this channel, we don't just talk about leadership theory. We break down why organizations fail to execute and how alignment transforms decision-making, accountability, and performance. And I would love to hear from you in the comments, what's the biggest waste of time meeting you have ever experienced? Let's talk about it.